Our reading this morning is found in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Hear these words from the New Revised Standard Version. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith, so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror, dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three. The greatest of these is love. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church today.
Good morning. I want to add my welcome to members of the Orleans Firebirds. I don't see Bob is out there somewhere. I see the coach in the corner trying to stay obscure. It's great to have you here, all of you. And I want to commend Emily for that wonderful reading of Paul's letter to the Corinthians. In introducing Emily, it should be noted that Emily participated in the very first baseball Sunday. She actually played a critical role of our then minister, who was perhaps not as quietly in tune with the game as Reverend Morgan. Actually, Emily tossed a ball to our minister, who was getting ready to go out and throw out the first pitch, and the minister dropped it. But that was not Emily's fault. I mean, Emily's pitch was right on. I mean, she absolutely had it. This reading, you've already heard the name of Reverend Phil Mitchell. This passage was his favorite biblical passage. This extraordinary man who marched at Selma and helped co-found Habitat for Humanity on the Cape and had a life of service and love in the work of God, this extraordinary man. This was his favorite passage of all. He talked about it on that first baseball Sunday. And that's why we have it here in the program. I don't pretend to, speak as a student of theology or the Bible, but I sort of understand this passage as Paul telling us that it's only through Christian love and all the dimensions that he describes that we can really come to know God and be known by God. I think he's telling us that God's love is in each of us and every one of us. But it sort of leaves this question: how do we share God's love, and how do we share in God's love? Now, maybe it's by doing good deeds. But Paul says, no, not so clearly. He says, if I give all that I have to the poor and give over my body to hardship and do not have love, I gain nothing. Well, maybe if I'm really smart and knowledgeable and wise, maybe if I have the gift of prophecy. Paul says, no. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, but do not have love, I am nothing. Well, then it must be about faith. It must be about my deep and abiding faith and my commitment to the church. Paul says, no. If I have faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. Good deeds, prophecies, even faith, powerful enough to move mountains is not enough. Whoa! But Paul is saying it's not what you do, it's not what you know, and it's not even the depth and strength of your faith. If you don't have love, you're nothing. This is not going to be easy, but hold on, because Paul gives us crystal clear guidance how we can share and share in God's love. And I will repeat a slightly different version of what Emily read. Because love is patient and love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. This one is hard for me, by the way. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. Rejoices in the truth. It always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. It perseveres. A pretty good prescription, don't you think, for all of us? I think that answers the question. How do we share and share in God's love? Now, there's another part of the passage that I'm sure is quite familiar to all. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought as a child. I understood as a child, but when I became a man, I put my childish ways behind me. I can't recall when I first heard that verse. It stuck with me. When I was a child, sports and games were my life. I spent, 10, 50, 100 times more time on the baseball field than in the library. Baseball, football, basketball, other sports fit in around the seasons, sometimes in organized teams and leagues, sometimes not, just kids playing. I did play organized sports in school and all the way through my college years. But then Judy and I married. We went off to Washington, D.C., and I went to work for the government. I worked on some pretty heady stuff, issues about ballistic missiles and submarines and nuclear weapons. We were negotiating with the Russians, being friendly with the French and the British in their nuclear programs. Not for children, these. Big person issues, adult stuff. No baseball here. After a few years, we moved from Washington back to Boston. Our first full year here was 1975. Now, I look around, and there are a whole lot of you, Darren, who were really fully of age in 1975. There was a lot going on in the world. It was not all good. But up the road in Boston, it was a magical year for the Boston Red Sox. They would win the pennant. They would go on to play the Cincinnati Reds in one of the truly great World Series contests, though they did lose the last game. But I'm getting ahead of the story. So newly arrived, late spring and summer, we sort of we picked up these vibrations, and we began to pay attention, listening to games on the radio, watching on TV, even making our way to Fenway Park. And I had heeded Paul's injunction to put childish games aside. But I realized I still love this game. I still love baseball. Now, this is not easy. At this point, it had become pretty clear I would never play left field in Fenway, right? Indeed, I had a whole series of hopes and aspirations, maybe fantasies is a better term. As a young person growing up, I was going to be, God, I hate to admit this, I was going to be the first great left-handed third baseman, okay? Those of you who know baseball know, I mean, this was really fantasy stuff. I had to come to a different understanding of baseball, kind of an adult level appreciation of the game. I'll share with you a couple of thoughts. They're certainly not original with me, but baseball is a classic contest. One team arrayed against the other, 25, 30 to a side, but only 9 on the field. And when there are 9 on the field, sometimes there's only one person there at the plate, one batter. And he's outnumbered 9-1. He's trying to get a hit. There's ample room in baseball, and more than any other sport, for sort of individual achievement and statistics and things like that. But success depends on the contributions of many, on cooperation, on commitment, and sometimes on sacrifice for a common goal. The second thing, the thing that I really love about the game is that there's not one game. There are hundreds of games. There are games within the game. Every pitch, every ball in play, 200, 300 times a game. This pitcher throwing to that batter with the defense deployed this way in this situation. Hundreds of games within. No team, no player wins them all. In fact, in every game, there are 100 or more small victories, 100 or more small setbacks, small defeats. The team won the game, but you played poorly. You struck out twice with men in scoring position. Your team lost, but you threw 2 perfect innings in relief. Right? I mean, 3 strikeouts, a pop-up, and 2 ground balls. Hey, wow, did I do great? But we lost. You can and learn from the small victories, and you can learn from the setbacks, but you can't let the setbacks take you down. Don't get too high. Don't get too low, because baseball is the everyday game. Now, the Firebirds were supposed to be, well, they played Thursday night. They had a big offensive night. They won. They were supposed to play Friday night and Saturday night last night, but the weather sort of knocked those out. In the bulletin is the fourth game, and what would have been the 4th game in a row. 5 o'clock at YD today. Enjoy yesterday's success and consider yesterday's setbacks in the moment. Learn what you can, but yesterday offers no promise of today's result. So I hope our guests, indeed, I hope all of us woke up this morning with a clean slate, looking forward and not back. It's part of what Paul wanted us to understand. I doubt he ever faced a split-fingered fastball or backdoor slider, but he knew many, many disappointments and many, many setbacks, along with his phenomenal success in bringing the gospel to so many. The love of which he writes is patient and kind. We help one another with these daily setbacks. We're not boastful or envious. We rejoice in the success of our brothers. We stand together. We pick each other up. We protect the weak. And with one another, we share our trust, our hopes, and together we persevere. I think Reverend Norris and Reverend Mitchell had something like this in mind when organizing the first Baseball Sunday. Phil Mitchell liked baseball. Indeed, in the sense of Christian love, I think articulated by Paul, Phil loved baseball. And that love is here with us today. Indeed, it fills this hall. Phil knew that we would gather here on this day, and his spirit directs our attention to the opening lines of the 12th chapter in Hebrews. Since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and with courage and endurance, let us all run the race that is set before us. Go Firebirds. Amen.